Storms in Nashville today, high of 60.
Hey, this is Rhonda Vincent, and you're listening to the It's Gonna Be Great podcast.
Today on episode 5 of the It's Gonna Be Great podcast, we are pleased to have as our guest Rhonda Vincent, the Queen of Bluegrass. She is a regular guest on the Grand Ole Opry and is quickly becoming an example of how to succeed in the modern era of the music business.
It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Yeah.
So thank you, Rhonda Vincent, for being here at Ocean Way for the It's Gonna Be Great podcast.
Oh, it's going to be great. I can't wait.
And it's a pleasure having you here. You've recorded here at Ocean Way. You did part of your last project here at Ocean Way.
I did.
So it's always an honor to have you here, and it's been fascinating watching your career over the years, just all the different things you've done. And you are, in my opinion, an interesting artist where you're kind of straddling the line of country music, bluegrass, and gospel music, which a lot of artists, it's hard for them to navigate the waters of doing more than just one thing, but you seem to kind of weave in and out of several genres and do it well.
Well, thank you.
So that's always fun to see that and just see your growth as an artist. So It's Gonna Be Great is the slogan that we have here at Ocean Way, and it basically is a catch-all phrase, and some things are truly going to be great. And then sometimes when it's a train wreck, the only thing we can say is it's going to be great.
It's good. It's very
But we
good.
felt that was a fitting name for the podcast, but it is truly great to have you here, so we appreciate that. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to come hang out with us for a few minutes and just get us caught up with what you're doing, and I know you're going off to the Grand Ole Opry tonight.
I am.
So just to give a little bit of history for the people who may or may not be aware of your music, you are a 8-time Grammy-nominated artist. You've won once.
Yes.
You have won countless international Bluegrass Music Awards, and you are
Yes.
also a member of the Grand Ole Opry.
Yes.
How many times have you played on the Opry?
You know, I think I am probably tonight might be 242, something like that. The night that I was invited to be a member was my 215th time, and that was February 28th of 2020. And then I waited 343 days until 2021, February 6th of 2021. I was invited by Jeannie Seeley, my Opry sister now, and I was inducted by Dierks Bentley.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's a dream come true.
Now, I know a lot of artists are on there all the time, but do you know what the record is or know which artist has been on the Grand Ole Opry the most?
Well, I have an idea. Jeannie Seeley has been a member for, I believe it's coming up on 56 years. Wow. So she has thousands of documented times on the Opry, but she was performing before they ever kept records. So she's in the thousands. That's kind of my goal. I want to catch up with her someday. I hope she'll be 82 in July of 2022. And I just hope I can follow in her footsteps and be on the Grand Ole Opry when I'm 82.
You're on the right track.
Yeah, and she sings great, and she's so entertaining and just hilarious. So she's my Opry sister, but also my hero.
So your latest project, Music Is What I See, was recorded here at Ocean Way. It's nominated for a Grammy, which we discussed. Congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Do you have a favorite song on that record?
You know, I think the title song, Music Is What I See. I mean, I guess I should say because I love Jeannie like I could. And I love all of them or I would not have recorded them. But Music Is What I See is extra special because of the line. And I wanted to sing this on my Opry induction night. The album wasn't finished, so I wasn't able to do that. But it says, God is good and God is great to me.
Right.
You know, and that's why I love that song so much, because it really signifies, a dream come true being an Opry member, Grammy nominations. And so God is he is so good. And that song really signifies that. Plus, it was written by Mike Deacle. And now Mike wrote the song, if you remember the Kenny Rogers song, the song Scarlet Fever. Yep. I get scarlet fever. Well, Mike wrote that song. And he also wrote another song that we do called Till They Came Home. And he passed just a few weeks ago. So that song became even more special to me. But it's so visual. I think his writing, you can virtually close your eyes, listen to the song, and you can see everything that he writes. And it has a lot of references to, Sunday Morning Coming Down and, Rocky Mountain High. It references a lot of different songs, but so many visuals.
In my research, I heard you say in another interview that the song Unchained Melody, it took you 12 hours to do that vocal. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. I thought I had heard that song for years. That shouldn't be that difficult. There are some many challenging songs on this project, and Unchained Melody is one of them. I sang for 6 hours and until I just was so exhausted just from trying to get this vocal exactly what I felt it needed to be, and went to bed, woke up the next morning and started again at 10 a.m. and sang for another 6 hours just to get the vocal on that. And I was terrified to do it on stage. After taking 12 hours to record it, I was so scared. And then right away, as soon as the album started, people started hearing it. Do you know the very first song that people requested? They wanted to hear Unchained Melody. It was an anniversary, and it's like I am so scared, and I didn't know it to remember it. And so I literally they said, please, they were on the front row, it was their anniversary, please sing Unchained Melody. I said, you know what? You've just, at some point, you get on the diving board and you know the water's going to be cold, but you got to jump in. And this is one of those times when I said, I pulled up the lyrics so I could follow along, and I did it, and it has become a most requested song. Probably can't do a show now without probably Unchained Melody. It's right at the top of the list. And I think it's the very first ever bluegrass version of this song. And I purposely had a banjo on it in order to, I always like to test out songs. So my Aunt Charlene, in fact, she passed this last December, but my Aunt Charlene, that's her favorite song. I did not know that. And I started running by songs by her because she's a really, not necessarily a bluegrass fan. She's, she likes the oldies. Right. That's a song. So I said, Charlene, I'm thinking about this song. Over the phone, I sang her Unchained Melody. She goes, oh, that's my favorite song. I said, well, I'm thinking about recording it. She says, you have to do this. So I recorded it, went to her house, and purposely played it. Now, I recorded with the banjo, and we even turned it up a little bit because I said, you know what, we want to signify, this is a first ever bluegrass version of Unchained Melody. And so I played it for her, and I look over, she's singing along and listening. And when it stopped, I said, okay, I just need to know. I said, do you think the banjo is too loud? She goes, I love the song so much, I didn't even know there was a banjo on it. So I wanted to make sure it wasn't too intrusive or like, does this need a banjo? But we've made it our own. So I was thrilled.
Well, your vocal performance on that, I think, is amazing, and it sounds effortless.
Oh well.
So now the real story is it took you 12 hours to get there.
It was not without great effort, I will have to say. 12 hours worth.
The sheer determination that I'm going to do this. Okay, I'm 6 hours in, and I'm still going to do it. Most artists would have quit at that point.
Oh, maybe so.
But it's amazing that you saw it to the end. But the result is amazing.
Well, thank you.
It's pretty well documented. You grew up in a musical family. You started singing around the age of 5. Were you always interested in music, or do you have any recollection of that? Or was it just assumed that you're going to be in music, or how did that whole thing just come about, or is it just natural and you didn't even think about it?
Well, I love how people ask me, when did you choose music? When did you choose bluegrass? And I grew up in this musical family. It's traced back 5 generations of music in our family. My daughter, Sally, who literally yesterday announced that she got the audition with the Navy Band. She will be the new lead vocalist for the Navy Band. And so she's the 6th generation that continues on with music. I literally started when I was 3, but the first documentation when I was 5, we had a television show, a radio show, made our first recording, and that was 1967. I'm going to date myself. And it was on-the-job training, because we're already into performing and everything and doing these shows. So as soon as I started singing, I just joined the group. When I started school, my dad would pick me up from school, and we played till dinner, and after dinner, we had a music party. Now, this sounds exciting. We had a music party at our house every night. If we weren't touring, or we just toured locally, But if we weren't playing somewhere or doing our radio show, we had a music party every night at our house. So I thought everybody was at their house doing the same thing. You know, when you're little,
Right.
that's just what you do, and that's kind of where, there's a variety of music. There's the country, there's the bluegrass, there's the gospel, and that is exactly what my family, when we had this TV show, we were called the Sally Mountain Show. That's the name my family continued with. That's a geographic location up in northern Missouri, near Greentop, where I'm from. So everybody was familiar with Sally Mountain. But it was not just family. It was my grandpa Bill, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, and my mom and dad. So because it wasn't just family, that's why we were called the Sally Mountain Show. And so it's just something that I loved. My Aunt Catherine sang like Kitty Wells, but Grandpa might sing Bill Monroe. My dad a Jimmy Martin song. My mother would sing Loretta Lynn, and everything in between. There was a comedian, always a gospel music. You know, we always sang in church. We lived a half a block from our church. So this culmination of all of these different genres of music is really just a continuation what I grew up around. There wasn't a real divide between one style of music and the other. My dad played electric guitar. He also played banjo. And, you know, he switched around on the instruments. I started playing when I was 8 years old. And then when I was 12, he said, you know, the mandolin is tuned the same as the fiddle. The time you started learning that, he played everything. He would get us started. We would take it from there. So it was just a very concentrated life of music that I grew to love it. And I do today. I wake up, it's like, how many different things can we do today? I love the music and I love being involved. The business of it, I love every aspect. Well, not every aspect, but almost.
That's part of what's intriguing to me about you as an artist, where I'm a music fanatic or junkie, but I'm also intrigued by the business.
Yes.
And I love to see artists who are very hands-on and who are working and learn not just their art, the music, but they learn the business and they take control of that. And you're basically running your own business. You're running your label. You're basically in charge of your destiny, as opposed to letting or waiting or wanting someone else to do it.
And that's interesting, the perception that people have. And more lately, I've run into people. It's like, oh, well, you don't have, you do that yourself. You don't need this, and it's like, because sometimes I think maybe I'm missing something. Do I need this? Do I need that? And then people go, no, well, you're already doing that. It's okay. So.
And with technology and where the industry is going, a lot more artists are doing the DIY or do-it-yourself model.
Right.
So but to me, that's also kind of been commonplace in bluegrass, because a lot of labels or businesses weren't necessarily interested in the genre as a whole, because they didn't see huge revenue that they might see with pop or rock or country or whatever. So it seems like a lot of artists were kind of left to their own devices to figure it out. But obviously you are a success story that you've figured it out on a lot of different levels. So to me, it's fascinating to see that side of it as well, not just the musical side of it.
That probably comes from my dad, because he always said, don't let anyone say you can't do something. So if I found a closed door, it's like, okay, how do we get this thing unlocked? What do we need to do? Or how do we go around and do this? So right. I can thank him for the determination to be able to do that. And I mean, I enjoy it, and I see other artists, and they'll say, "Hey, I want you to. Would you mentor me, or can I see how this works?" But what the problem becomes, you know, I'm going to get under the bus and do some inventory. And what I find is they're not willing to do the work. You know, it's not all fun and games, and it's not all glamorous, and you know, the things that you have to do if you're, you know what, it's freezing cold. My pet peeve that I hate, and I'm building a bus barn right now, so I don't have to do this, but it never fails. I would not get all my stuff on the bus, and it's pouring down rain, and there's mud to get down back to the shed, and we're out of product, or we're out of shirts, and it's all in the storage shed, and now you got to hike in the dark. You've waited till midnight, the bus call. You got to go in the mud, in the rain, in the dark, and try to get through the shed and find what
both ways.
Uphill both ways, barefooted. You know, it's cold. It's all of this, and you have to go get all that stuff
right.
and pack the bus or load the stuff. You know, I'm sure my guys think, listen, you've been here all day. doing other things probably. You've been here all day, and now it gets time to load the bus, and everybody's trying to get through that one door to load all your stuff instead of, I should have done this earlier in the day when no one was there. But you live
and you learn.
Yeah, you do. And you'd think after I've done it for this many years, I would have that down.
And that's one of the perceptions that a lot of people have of the music business. It's all glamorous.
Right. It's
all fun and games. And I joke around with a lot of the younger staff here when something goes wrong, i.e. it's going to be great. We had, without getting too graphic, we had a toilet get stopped up a couple weeks ago.
No,
and one of our young guys spent quite a while trying to fix the situation in the restroom, and I was just like, welcome to the music business.
That's right. It's all goes hand in hand.
This is what they don't tell you in school. This is the glamorous, not so glamorous side of being in the music business, is you literally have to be able to do everything.
There's so many elements to that. I mean, and here's the bottom line is, though, I mean, it is the bottom line. You can either do it yourself, or that's going to be funds that come from your checking account.
Absolutely.
And so the first thing I think everyone should have to do, and I think Florida just implemented this, you don't get to graduate from high school unless you can balance your checkbook. If you cannot do that, you should not be out here in society. You're going to have to handle money. You're going to have to pay bills, and you need to know how to do that. And to me, artists, they're thinking about the music so much, but listen, there's fuel right now. This is, I don't know if you want to date this at all, but fuel for me right now is $1,000 when I fill up the bus. And I own my own bus. That's not for everybody either. And at one point, I had my CDL learner's permit. I said, if I'm going to own the bus, I should be able to drive it. Now, the bus there's several things that I ended up not twice now. I've had my learner's permit. One of these days, I'm going to have my CDLs where if I want to drive the bus across town or wherever I want to, I'll be able to do that. But it's an independent thing, but it's a cost saver. I could pay someone. In fact, I have done that. And I think I've tried a lot of these things that they didn't work. I tried to have someone just to pay my bills, just to take that. But then I had bills come in, and I didn't owe them, and they didn't know that, and they paid them anyway. So if I'm gonna have to oversee this, my idea is I might as well do it myself. Yeah. So there's a lot of basic things, knowing. How about reading a map? In third grade, Miss Houston made us. This is a folding. These kids don't know that these days. They don't know about taking a paper map and having to find a location and then figure out how to get there and fold this map back up, which I never did figure out what's the importance except for that map's available when you need it again. But now you need to know how to get there. I had a driver once, and this is where I didn't coordinate with the driver. I figured he knew how to get there. He took us an entire tank of diesel out of the way up into Michigan when we should have cut across and gone, because only it looked like it was one distance on here. But you have to check in with these drivers. Right. Do you know which way you're going, and do you know which direction? How are you going to, we kind of have a hard fast rule. We're willing to go out of the way a bit just to stay on the interstate, because you can get yourself in a pickle. There could be a low clearance. I mean, there's just so many different aspects to what we do. Way beyond the music. I mean, the music is the fun part, creating it, coming to Ocean Way and getting to create the music. That's the fun part of it. But if you're an artist, really, you need to balance your checkbook, know what a debit and a credit is, and know about expenses and saving money. I mean, if you're an artist, you're probably an independent, dependent upon yourself for your retirement. So even look beyond that. There's a lot of things that in life that you really need to look at beyond just, I want to sing, I want to play. I can't express to you how important it is to be able to balance these things. And here's a really good example. When I first started my own group, I've traveled with my family all of these years. So now I have my own group. And I would have loved nothing more than to pull into the Bluegrass Festival like some of the other artists like Bill Monroe and Ralph Stanley in a shiny new bus. I had a Buick LeSabre, and there put four of us with a bass over the seats in the middle of the car. And we drove to the festivals in this Buick LeSabre. And I made money my first year because I wasn't spending money. We would get one hotel room, and these are men, and And that's another thing, ladies. You got to find that line. You can travel with men, but you got to know where the line is, and there's a respect that you have to have. So we would get one hotel room. We would pull the mattress off of the top of the bed. I would get a blanket or something. I'd sleep on the box spring, and so we're saving money there. We're getting one hotel room. We're traveling in a Buick LeSabre, and when I got home, I was not in a minus situation. I was in a plus.
That's huge. That is huge. A lot of artists, unfortunately, learn that the hard way.
Yes.
So it's fascinating just to even hear that perspective from you, and hopefully someone can learn from that.
I hope so. Yes, please.
Going back real quick on one other thing that is pretty well documented in your past, you were told at an early age from one of the Wooten brothers.
That's not the Wooten brothers you probably think either. This is the Bluegrass Wooten
Right.
brothers in Arkansas.
That you were okay for a girl on the mandolin.
Pretty good for a girl.
Pretty good for a girl. My question that I've never heard anybody ask, and my obvious question, did you ever talk to him later and tell him the effect, in a positive way or negative, that comment had on you, and that it basically was your determination to become good at the instrument or become even better at the instrument? Did you ever have that conversation after the fact?
Well, here's the crazy thing. I have not seen him since. His name is Skip Wooten.
Skip,
And
are you
Skip,
listening?
If you know what, I want to thank you, Skip. My aggression and my determination, I think, started on that day when you told me that, and I'm sure he meant it in the most kindest way. A gentleman who's friends with Skip just sent me his phone number and said you need to call him. So, but I feel a little strange about calling him because Skip inspired a song, the All-American Bluegrass Girl. I used that in that song. And there's even a book that Murphy Henry wrote called Pretty Good for a Girl that came from Skip's inspiration. So I feel like, God had that plan, and I'm sure he planted that seed in there. So maybe I will. Should I call him? What do you think I should do?
I think you should, because I don't
But
think
what
you're-
am I going to say
I
to
don't
him?
think you're, tell him thank you.
Okay.
Because I don't think you're doing it from a malicious point of view. It's like this. I took it negatively, but you turned that negative into a positive. And I honestly, like you're saying, I doubt he meant it malicious or like he's trying to throw a jab.
Yeah, if you're there, we're 10 years old, and you
Right.
come up to me and say,
That was that generation. That's just what they said.
yeah, no, nothing meant nothing
No.
bad.
But it's how you took it, perceived it. But that's become the
Boy.
motivation for your career.
Oh boy, yeah. When he said that, I'm like,
So call him up. And let us.
okay.
The next.
Should we
podcast-
call him right now? We need to do, because the Grammys are coming up, and so we'll call Skip and we'll see what the Grammys who takes that Grammy. Maybe we do part 2.
That will absolutely be another podcast. You grew up in music. It's all around you from an early age. That's all you've ever known. Did you ever have a plan B, or did you ever want to do anything else, or was music all you ever wanted to do?
In 7th or 8th grade, they give you a test to try to begin your career path and to know what your interests are in and what your skill set is in. And I remember writing this test, and it shows you your top 3 things that you should go into. Number 1 was music. Surprise, surprise. The second one was accounting, and the third one was law, to be a lawyer. And ironically, when I went to college, I was studying accounting, data processing, and I took photography and I took business law. So
And fast forward, that all helps you in your business today.
See how that
Especially-
worked out?
Especially the accounting.
Yes, very much so.
So to me, my perception of you as an artist, just watching you on social media, you never stop. You're always doing something,
Oh, that's true.
which is good.
Yeah.
So your latest record's out. You're back touring.
Yes.
What's next? What's the next thing on the horizon, if you can talk about it?
Well, I mean, right now it's just gearing back up and getting back out on the road. I have new members in the group, and the problem has been it's been a slow process getting back out on the road in a full, a full schedule. Mm-hmm. What I found is our dates were rescheduled like 4 and 5 times.
Right.
And so we ended up with one show here this weekend, one show over here. We didn't have a consistent schedule to where we were on the road 3 days, 4 days, or even 2 weekends in a row or continuously. And so right now, I think we're recovering. We have new members. So it's trying to get some consistency. And I have years of a repertoire that spans over years now. And like we go to a show and the other night people were requesting songs I didn't even remember. I had to pull up the words. A songwriter from a number one song that I had years ago comes to the show. It's like, I have to do her song. So we're learning these songs very quickly. So right now we're trying to get, I think, consistency and get the new members, whatever you would call that, to, you want to mesh. And even though they're incredible musicians, you have to gel together, and there's no replacement for experience. I see people and they're like, oh, I want to hurry. I want to do this. There's not a fast pace that you can do. You have to rehearse the music, and you have to get a band that, after you've been together, that is going to gel, and that's going to have to me, it's a confidence. I have a fiddle player Hunter Berry's been in my group for 20 years. So I know what Hunter's going to be there. My bass player, 19, he's coming up on 20 years. And Aaron's been there, my banjo player, for 13 years. So we have a stability in these people. We have new members. One of the guys, and they're both in their 20s. They're young. They've never traveled at this pace before. And so we're, I think, just now finding our way. They're amazing musicians. They bring, and it's almost a renewed, we're excited to be on tour, but it's this renewed spirit of new members. They play everything. They sing all the different parts. We have different dimensions, I guess. The sound of the voices are all different. So we are creating so many different things, but it's very difficult to go and say, I'm going to do new songs every week, because we have to have a consistent show. So.
They have to learn the songs.
They have to learn it. They've never heard it,
right.
And just the things. I forgot what I was telling. Oh, it was a codophone. There's a generation gap here now, that I was talking about a codophone, because that's how I first got to sing with Dolly Parton. The light was blinking at home, and I was telling Zach this, and he goes, I don't know what that is. He said, I was born in 2000. It's like, oh my goodness. So we're even melding new ideas. And then he's also bringing me things that I'm not aware of. It's a new generation. So there's an excitement in all of this. But, I hope to get back to Ocean Way very soon. The first opportunity that I get, I have an idea for the next project. And I have the songs, but it's just finding the time to do that, and finding the exact theme that we want to go with. But I have all this, kind of like the day that I was at Ocean Way with Jeannie Seeley, and all of a sudden I can record in an hour and a half. Luckily, I've been holding these songs, looking for that opportunity to record. So the next time you get an opening, just give me a call.
I know a guy. We can make that happen. You touched on this briefly in the last question, but we're actually in an interesting time in the industry where technology is changing everything. It's changing the way we consume music, the way we consume any sort of information at all, the way we buy stuff. It's definitely affected the music industry, where when I came up in the music business, or as a kid, and you came up, everybody was buying cassettes or records or CDs, or now everything is streaming. How has the change in the industry and technology affected your business model in general? Because nobody's buying as much physical product as they used to buy. So how have you had to adjust and adapt to that moving forward?
That's one of the great things about bluegrass music. The technology doesn't move. It doesn't move as fast.
Yep.
So we're still into CD mode. But I find a lot of people, they no longer, if they don't have a CD player. So my answer to that was, and that's is always figuring out what is it that's needed, and how can I get this? So I had the idea of a USB drive, which they had, but I was looking at them. There's squares, circles, triangles. That's boring. So I found a place. They took my mandolin. They took a picture of my mandolin, the color of my mandolin, and they replicated a mandolin USB drive that's a replica of mine. And so the new album, Music Is What I See, is also on this little USB drive.
Do you just put one album on there, or is there more than that on the drive?
Well, just one album because I want to get
So they can
more.
buy more
I want to
drives.
sell more of those, right?
Yeah.
It's simple economics on that. But yeah, that's what I know. Other people are putting a whole bunch of music on one. It's like, what are you doing? You want each one. To me, every USB drive is going to signify that project.
Right.
And if you put it in your computer, we have added, photos or some extra things that you get.
right.
Yeah, extra content on the computer. But yeah, I mean, it's always figuring out what's new. I experimented when I recorded Like I Could here at Ocean Way. I was looking at the marketplace at that time, and I did an experiment then. And I released, it's not so much an album these days, but it's single songs.
Right.
And so I released Like I Could probably weeks after I recorded it here, I believe. I have to look and see what the exact date was. But I recorded it and I released that single. And now I'm probably telling way more than you even want to know about. But, my mother, let's go back, growing up, everything that we did had to pay for itself. So when we did a trip and we went to play, she took the money that we made that weekend and every receipt, and she would write out a little, like a report, and it would say, we made this much minus these expenses, and we came home with this. And so I'm kind of like, I continue in that model. So here she had that trip. I have a song that I'm going to release, and I'm thinking, how do we quantify or what's the word I'm looking for?
Recoup.
Yes. So how do we do that? We release this single, and it's going to stream, and we don't have any revenue that's coming in for this. And do you know, I look at it now as advertising.
Sure.
So I did this, and like I say, I'm probably spewing way too much information. So I released that single, and I hired the PR, Jeremy Westby, took it and sent it to radio and to the other, I guess, I'm trying to think of I'm not sure specifically all the places he did, but anyway, hired a PR company, Jeremy Westby's company, to promote this one single. And I'm thinking, how am I gonna pay for all this? Do you know? He calls me and says, hey, I have a promoter and they want to book you on 2 dates. From his contacting them and promoting this single, it brought in revenue of 2 dates that more than paid for all of that. So, I just like to always, find how's that revenue source, and it has to, whatever it is, and that's just a lesson from my mother. So music is very much balancing your budget and the expenses. I have some recording. I used to have my own studio, so I have a lot of these things at my house. Or here's a better example. I went to the violin shop here in Nashville, and I was looking for a fiddle bow. They had a $30,000 fiddle bow. And there's a threshold in which you call your husband before you make a purchase, right? Well,
Please tell me that's above the threshold.
So, this particular bow was half price, I think, at $14,000 because the tip had been broken. And so he said no one is going to pay the full price because of that. So $14,000 for the bow. When I played that one, it's like it played the fiddle itself. And I called my husband and I said, honey, I'm at the violin shop and I have found a $14,000 fiddle bow. He said, you play 2 songs on the show, you're not getting that bow. But I said, but you know what? Hunter Berry plays all this. He deserves to have it. Maybe I should get it. But anyway, the answer was no. And I think that's what you have to tell yourself when you find yourself in these certain places. You may want that tour bus. Maybe, I don't know if I finished that thought, but you may want the tour bus. I really would still like to have that $30,000 bow, but it has to make sense. And It has to, so don't go out and release a single and pay for more promotion than you can ever recoup. Yeah. So, bear in mind, but you know what? You do have to invest in yourself.
Absolutely.
And so that's where you find, how can I invest in myself? How can I do this? And how can I make this a revenue stream within my boundaries of what I do? And you know what? And then maybe that will get the attention of, so when I first did my first country album in Nashville, I was recording for Rebel Records, a bluegrass record. Carl Jackson was in recording, and James Stroud was in Studio A recording a guy that hadn't came out yet by the name of Clint Black. So you never know where your connections will lead you, and that led me to being signed by James on Giant Records and doing 2 country albums there. So perfect your craft and do the very best that you can. Make your connections as well as you can, and you know what? God will. He gives you the desires of your heart. I'm an Opry member. I never thought that would happen, but you know. Think about what you're doing. Make sure it makes sense. Make sure it's within your budget. But most of all, you know, pray that God will lead you to the right decisions in your career.
And God also gives us a brain.
Yes, He does. Yes.
So He would like it if we would use it every now and then.
That's right.
And make some practical decisions. So you are pretty active on social media.
I am.
Hence, you will see some streaming stuff here at Ocean Way.
Yes.
How has social media affected the way you approach Rhonda Vincent, the artist, the businesswoman, everything? Because obviously you're pretty active in it. Do you see that as something that you have to use all the time, or do you see it as a necessary evil and you don't want to use it, or do you love it and embrace it?
Well, I find it's necessary.
Right.
It is a staple, and it's what you have to do. It's the way you communicate with people. So first of all, you have to do that. I had hired a internet guru or a social media guru to try to learn this from them. And what I found is the content that I said, I'm going to just turn it over to them and let them post whatever they think is best. But what I found, it was not connecting with people. And so I said, okay, let me try one. And I started posting just my normal day-to-day things that we're doing, and then I always thought, man, I've got to be dressed up and with my posts. You know, I need to make sure I have my hair fixed and everything. And then one morning I thought, you know what, I really need to promote our show today, but I'm not even, haven't even combed my hair. I'm fresh out of bed or whatever. And I started posting like that, and I found that connects with more people than if I did a photo shoot and post all of the best pictures. People just want to connect on a personal level. Yep. And that works for me. I don't know that works for everybody. My daughter says that my business model, everything that I do, she says, you're an anomaly. That doesn't work for everybody. You should, most people are buying Facebook ads or they're doing this, and there's a cookie cutter, I guess a template that people will tell you to do, and those usually don't work for me. So I just went out on a limb and found the things that work for me. A catfish, for instance, yesterday was the 2-year anniversary. It was March in 2020, and my husband, we were fishing on the Lake of the Ozarks, and he said, oh, I've got a big fish. I just kicked on, no title, no nothing. I just kicked on my Facebook Live, over 10 million views of this talking catfish. So it boggles my mind. Right. And I gave him a haircut in the middle of 2020. That's coming up April 9th. I'll be posting that anniversary of that because people were screaming around the world, no, stop. Because his hair had grown way out, and I peeled him. Nice. So to answer your question, I guess you have to have the social media. I try to approach whatever I'm doing, let's make this fun. Right. Because there's no need for us to sit here and be miserable. Let's have a great time doing this. So that's kind of my approach.
So I would say, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I would see you as an advocate for bluegrass. I've seen in other interviews that you're very specific about the way you would dress when you go on stage. Yes. And trying to dispel some of the stereotypes, myths, rumors that people have about bluegrass as all being, hillbillies from the backwoods of Kentucky or whatever. So as you are trying to do that, it's a very intentional shift where you're trying to portray the genre of music as something different than what a lot of people who don't know the genre see it as. Where do you see the future of bluegrass going?
Well, I think there's a preservation of the tradition of bluegrass music. For me, it's very personal. It's my life. Right. This is not beyond a career, this is my life. I love the music, and I've lived it, and that's the way I grew up. So for me, it's personal. I don't like to see it to be a stereotype of hillbilly, or barefoot, missing teeth.
Right.
The two prominent movies that portrayed bluegrass music, or acoustic music, I guess, but people think it's from bluegrass. Is "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou"
Right.
and "Deliverance." And yes, the music might be there, but it did not portray it to me in a healthy way. And it was deceiving to people, because I might wear a Vera Wang gown. I usually do. I usually always wear designer gowns. My guys dress in suits. So I think, number one, for me, it's personal. Bluegrass is family. There's a very tradition. There's a tradition that we must preserve of our beginnings. I love that you can take bluegrass music, or any music, and you want to progress. I'm all for that. I wouldn't say I'm not a Bill Monroe style bluegrass. That's what I hear people say. Oh, my wife doesn't like bluegrass, but she likes you. Okay, but I consider myself to be bluegrass, but maybe we do other things on the fringes too. So but my fear is when I see, and I recently did an interview with Rolling Stone magazine. I don't know how much of it they're going to, and I did not name anyone, but there's a safeguard that I feel that we need, something that I'm embarrassed for bluegrass, and I feel like as the music progresses, it's still a family, and I feel like each artist needs to realize you are influencing children.
Yep.
So it's important to watch what words you say, not to use foul language,
Right.
not to portray yourself in illegal activity. Those two things bother me quite a bit. And I've been thinking about this. There's some artists that I see out there, and I got on Instagram, and this artist was going to a school, and it concerned me greatly. And I've decided, when I get the opportunity to see this artist personally, because this is what the Bible says. It doesn't say to go spew this all over a podcast or in Rolling Stone magazine. It says to go to that person one-on-one. And so I have in my heart, I've decided at some point I'm going to do that, just to, maybe they don't even realize that you are influencing children. So
Right.
make sure that you're presenting yourself in a professional manner, not something that's illegal, and especially, for the future of bluegrass.
I think there's a generation gap where a lot of younger, newer artists or musicians or even fans maybe just like or hear the music and like the music and maybe don't do the research on the history or know where something came from or even why it's the way it is. So that's
Probably so.
That's
yeah.
part of what you're saying about the history. It's like if someone just all of a sudden liked a certain band but didn't realize the history of bluegrass and the festivals and the family atmosphere and everything that's made bluegrass what it is, if they don't learn that, I could see there could easily be a generation that is probably completely unaware of some of that stuff.
That's true, because they're just hearing it on their phone. I didn't think about that.
Yep.
Yeah, they're not going to the festival like I did and playing with the other musicians and jamming and spending the whole weekend. And yeah, if you're just hearing a song on there, yeah, that's probably what has changed it. I mean, that's the great thing. I love the internet because you can listen to any style of music that you want. You can connect with people, but you're not getting out to the festival. You might just hear it here. So, but that's the great thing. People, they hear it and usually they end up coming to a show. So that's my hope. And
that's where they hopefully understand or see or get the connection at that point once they experience it.
Well, and I realize that wherever you are, you are only exposed to what, like my father, I didn't know the Beatles. And when I was in country music, I was produced James Stroud and Richard Landis. Richard's
Right.
from New York. I'm from a tiny town, Greentop, Missouri. And he would go, Rhonda, name one of the Beatles. And I would say, Richard, who's the father of bluegrass? So there was this, I love Richard and we got along really great, but I was not exposed. I literally thought Yesterday was originally recorded by the Country Gentlemen. So you are only exposed to what your family, we did not listen to anything but the Grand Ole Opry. Right. It was country music and bluegrass and the Osborne brothers and Jimmy Martin. So that's what we listened to. So I can understand you don't know the history or you're not familiar with that.
Interesting. I agree. depending on who you talk to, there's a little bit of a divide in bluegrass based on literally what you just said about traditional and purist, and there's maybe progressive or modern bluegrass, where there's sometimes the two worlds don't connect or don't seem to connect depending on who you talk to. Do you see that becoming more of a problem, or do you even see that as an issue, or is that just something that traditional people are kind of thinking there's a problem or an issue when there may not be one?
I mean, if we showed up at the same place, it might become an issue. But I think, and if I saw a decline in my shows, I might be concerned. But I mean, as long as we're on the road, as long as there's a market for what we're doing, right. I'm sure there's a market for the other too.
Right.
So, I mean, to me, that's where you look at that. Because if I say, okay, people aren't coming to my shows, why is that?
Right.
What is it? I mean, and it starts with the song, and it starts with the recording at Ocean Way, or it's the music you're creating here at Ocean Way. It starts with that, and then it's exposed. They hear it, they want to come to the show. So I guess I did a show. It was for PBS in 2019, and it mixed a bit of the music. And so for me, it's like if I'm home watching that with my mom, if some of the more progressive artists come on, my mom's going to, I don't like to listen to that. She's going to want the more traditional music. But then if you have one of my daughters come in, now a younger generation, they're like, oh, no, I love this. I love the more contemporary. So I think it's only becomes and maybe not even really an issue, but I think everyone migrates. You're going to migrate to the music that you want to hear,
right.
Luckily. And I don't think anybody's forcing, they're not going to force Bill Monroe, or they're not going to force Bela Fleck, or whatever that other conflicting music might be as a rule. Unless, you know what, this is the great thing about the Grand Ole Opry. They present, I was on the Opry with Sam Bush, who right. probably is considered more contemporary.
Right.
But they present a little bit of everything, and I think that's a great part of that. There's a platform for everyone.
What advice would you give to an up-and-coming artist?
I mean, for any artist, have something unique.
Yep.
Don't sound like anyone else, and have a song that they can't hear anywhere else.
Starts with a song.
It starts with a song. I mean, I have so many people they want a shortcut. There isn't a shortcut. You got to do the work. First of all, perfect your craft. Take every opportunity to perform. I mean, such as my dad, we always, growing up, and we played the nursing home every month. Once a month, we're going to the nursing home. We would sing funerals, wherever, and we always sang in church, but you're performing in all of these different environments. And you do that because I think people go, oh, I don't want to go. I don't even feel like they're listening to me at the nursing home. It doesn't matter. You could be bringing joy to someone there, but more than anything, you're there, you're singing and you're playing, and you're having this opportunity. For my daughter, when she was, probably 12, they wanted her to sing the national anthem, and right away she did. The microphone, the PA system went out, and they wanted her to sing the national anthem on a megaphone, and she's like. I said, listen, are you a man or a mouse? What are you going to do? There are people, the game is waiting to go. She was singing for a basketball game. Right. You can take the megaphone and sing it so we can play the game, or you can just, you can drop your head and walk off of there. She sang the national anthem out of a megaphone. You get to experience different things. The PA going out, I don't know, like the other night I wore a dress, I went to get my shoe and the back ripped out of it. Whatever it is, so that you don't panic. And I think this, it's unnerving. You go in a large platform like the Opry, or say, for instance, the CMA Awards. So this is when I realized that my father and his we played all the time. We played in different scenarios, wherever. It might be a beautiful auditorium. It might be in a hayfield. Wherever it was, we played, and you adapted to wherever you were. So I am performing with Norah Jones and Dolly Parton on the CMA Awards. I should have been so nervous, right? I was so calm. I am here next to Brian Sutton on guitar, Stuart Duncan on the fiddle, Norah Jones, Dolly Parton, all of these amazing. And I was so calm because I just said a little thank you in my heart. And I said, thank you, Dad, for, you've prepared me for this moment, and I am not. You have to know your craft, know what you're singing, rehearse, practice. Somebody told me once, you practice at home, you rehearse when you get together. So however you want to put that, but you know what, you perfect that craft. You know what you're playing, you know what you're singing, you know the material, so that when you have that opportunity, you are ready when opportunity knocks.
What advice have you been given that's always stuck with you?
One of the greatest pieces of advice came from Alan Jackson, because I was recording my early albums on Rebel. I would always put a little country music in it. I would put, this is from my family. We did a gospel song. We did some country music. We did some bluegrass. But what I discovered, he said, do not chase an audience. Let the audience chase you. And I looked back now when I finally, this was on Rebel, I get to Rounder Records, and Ken Irwin says to me, there's a void for a woman. There's no women out here that sings and plays traditional, down the pike, traditional bluegrass music. He said, that lane is wide open. And he said, you can fill that. If you go in and record, we recorded 22 songs to see where the perimeters lie. And it was that album that was reviewed by the Wall Street Journal in 2000. And that's when they said, new Queen of Bluegrass, Rhonda Vincent. And so I think that it's hearing from people like that, watching Dolly, having the opportunity to sing and perform with her, and watching, I think probably most people think, as I did, like she's a woman who can have anything that she wants. But yet I'm in the studio with her and I'm watching her people come and bring her tomatoes because she's going to go home and fry up fried green tomatoes. And during Heart Songs, got to spend 10 days with her and watching her and how she spent. There's a cast of 60, I think, every day. And I asked her about this later. Every day she spent time, like she would come and visit with Darren and I, or Allison in Union Station, or, all Roy Husky and Pig Robbins and all these incredible musicians were on this project. She spent and with cast and crew. And I said, how did you know? Did she make a checklist? Did she know I haven't talked to these people? She didn't even realize that she had done that. But that's because of what a wonderful person that she is, and she took the time. So, and just learning from her, watching from her, and more than anything, her generosity. In 2005, I had a life-threatening illness that I didn't expect to be here sitting before you right now. And when I got out of the hospital, Dolly Parton made the trip from Nashville to my home, Greentop, Missouri, was standing in my living room, and she said, I had to make sure you were okay myself. So I think not just telling someone something, but act by actions. Yep. Actions speak louder than words.
That's amazing. I'm tearing up.
I was sitting there crying. When she walked, I saw her. That's all I did. I stood and just was in tears.
Throughout your career, you have been able to work with a lot of very well-established artists, from Dolly to some of the other artists you've worked with. Is there somebody that you would like to work with that you have not, or who's your bucket list artist to work with?
Yes, there is one guy on that bucket list, and I sure hope. And I almost had the opportunity just to call him, and I said, no, I want to wait till I have a song, and maybe I can use that. It's almost like having that free card to do this one thing. So I love James Taylor. Never met him. I've been to many of his shows, but I've never made an effort to meet him. And I'm friends with Bernie Taupin. Right. And I got to do we got to do Please on the Elton John Bernie Taupin tribute. And I think it was during that process. Elton John was in Nashville and got to meet him and was talking to Bernie about how I love James Taylor. And he said, oh, well, let's call him up. I said, no. Don't just call him up. But I said, Bernie, at some point, I would love to meet James and I would love to sing with him. And he said, okay, you get the song and you get the opportunity, and then we will call him. So that's on my bucket list, to meet James Taylor, and I would love to get to sing with him.
I could see his music and yours working very well together.
It could work, I think.
That could be a collaboration that can happen.
Oh, I hope so.
Bring him to Ocean Way.
I know, right?
Absolutely.
Well, the next time you know he's in town, you set that up for me.
Hey, everybody.
Are you looking for some cool studio swag? Why, yes, I am.
Well, if you are, then we got you covered. You can get your own Ocean Way Nashville studio merchandise at our web store, www.oceanwaynashville.com/store. Once again, that's www.oceanwaynashville.com/store.
Great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. Yeah.
We have a segment on the podcast called It's Gonna Be Great.
Yeah.
Just a couple of quick questions. First thing that pops in your head. What is the greatest concert you've ever been to and why?
Greatest concert was in Nashville, Tennessee. It was Linda Ronstadt. And it was I just told someone recently, it still is. That had to be back in the 90s. And the band was amazing. Her voice was amazing. And what really took me by surprise, she didn't play an instrument. She didn't even pick up the microphone. The microphone stayed on a stand. It wasn't, I can't say there was elaborate staging. She was the show, and it was her voice, and it was magnificent, and the songs were amazing, and I still to this day, greatest show I've ever seen, Linda Ronstadt.
Where was that at?
It was an outside theater they used to have here in Nashville. Do you remember what?
Starwood?
Starwood, yes.
Gotcha. What is the greatest record of all time and why?
Oh, I think that's probably James Taylor, the JT album. Love every song. I listened to that on vinyl as a teenager over and over. And I learned this album and these songs inspired me, I guess I was 16, to play guitar. I got the James Taylor guitar book, chord book, knew the song so well. It's like, I'm going to get a song, but it's like, I don't want to just learn 3 chords. So I got that book and I learned to play guitar by James Taylor's, by that album, JT.
Who is the greatest artist of all time and why?
Well, for me, probably coming from bluegrass and in country music and everything that I do, to me, the greatest artist that I would want to go listen to would probably be Ricky Skaggs, because I love his singing, I love his playing, and his shows are always, just amazing. The music is always amazing.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode of the It's Gonna Be Great podcast. Thank you, Rhonda, for being here. It was a pleasure. We look forward to having you back at the studio to record, hopefully, your next project.
Oh, I hope so.
But thank you for being here, and it was an absolute pleasure, and I think that's it.
And can I love to invite everybody to check out rhondavincent.com, and that's where you can find that little USB mandolin drive, or you can see where we're going to be, or you can even talk to me. We have a message board.
And what is all your social media stuff?
And so rhondavincent.com, we check out everything there, but Facebook is Rhonda Vincent Official, Instagram Rhonda Vincent, Twitter Rhonda Vincent 13.